And I tell myself about forgiveness. I'd remind myself, I would teach myself to forgive a lot quicker, including myself. I held myself to my own pain for a long time because I kept rehashing those failures over and over and over again. And in rehashing those failures, it prevented me from moving forward. So I would tell that 20-year-old guy back then, be a little bit more forgiving of yourself and a whole lot more forgiving of other people. To remember that Lord's Prayer that your mama taught you. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. It would have made my way a lot easier.
A person who can forgive nothing is a person who's totally destroyed psychologically and emotionally. Forgive your parents. Forgive any relationship that you ever had that didn't work out. Forgive everyone else in your life that has ever hurt you in any way. Forgive yourself.
Forgiveness is giving up the hope that the past could be any different.
I think for myself, and I know many of you, you think forgiving means accepting what has happened to you. Well, it is accepting that it has happened to you. Not accepting that it was okay for it to happen. It is accepting that it has happened, and now what do I do about it? Forgiving is giving up the hope, not holding on, hoping, wishing that it could have been any other way than it actually was. Giving up the hope that the past could be any different. And when I got that, I think it took me to the next level of being a better person, because I don't hold grudges for anything or any situation, and neither should you. It's letting go so that the past does not hold you prisoner, does not hold you hostage.
You have to be willing to break from the past to have the future you so desperately desire. You have to have the courage to allow yourself to honor the past as it was, to forgive those who need to be forgiven, to forgive yourself, and to acknowledge that everything led you to this point now. Everything.
I've always known this, but somebody told me something one time about forgiveness. Forgiveness is not for the other person. Forgiveness is you. See, your unwillingness to forgive another person is like you sipping the poison, waiting on them to die. You can't sip the poison of unforgiveness and expect them to die. Forgiveness is for you. I don't have time for nonsense. You know, like like what they say about me in the blogs. It don't matter what they say. They don't know me. They don't even know me. They never met me. They say negative stuff about me. It don't mean nothing. Look at me. What do I care what they say? God keeps blessing me. It don't matter what you say. You got to know who you are and whose you are. I know who I am and I know who I belong to. And that God of mine ain't gonna let nothing happen to me. If you do not include God in your life, man, you're making a horrible mistake. You're doing yourself a horrible injustice. You're making this way harder than it's got to be. God really does want to help you. He really does.
We all have things that come against us. It's easy to live uptight, wondering how it's going to work out. What if the medical report isn't good? What if my finances don't get better? What if my child doesn't get accepted in that school? We tried to figure it out. We've done our best, but we don't see anything changing. If we're not careful, we'll live worried, discouraged, not expecting it to get better. But there's a simple phrase you have to keep down in your spirit. God's got this. He's on the throne. He sees what's happening. He already has the solution. You don't have to figure it out. There may not be a logical answer. In the natural, you don't see a way. That's okay. We serve a supernatural God. He has ways to do it we've never thought of. And instead of trying to force it to happen, living uptight, you have to let go and let God. When you turn it over to Him and say, God, I know you've got this. I know you're in control. Not only will you feel the heaviness, the weight lift off of you, but God will make things happen that you couldn't make happen. And some of the things that are frustrating you now, causing you to lose sleep, that would all change if you would have this new perspective that God's got this.
Everything that's happening to you is God is processing. Every difficult moment you're having, He just processing. That's all He's doing. Everything you're going through is preparing you for what you ask God for. And if you need to be tough when you get to where you're going, then He gonna toughen you. If you got to be more caring along the way, He gonna let you have some trials come your way that's gonna have to produce that in you.
Saying we trust God is one thing, but when we really trust God, we enter His rest. Trying to trust God is frustrating, but when you really trust Him, you really don't worry about the situation because you know that God will take care of it. You don't know when. You're not trying to figure out when. You don't know how. You're not trying to figure out how. You're just, you know God will do it.
The challenges of life. How do we get stuck? A friend of mine went through a divorce. My best friend. He had a wife that did not love him as much as he loved her. It was his first real true love. He was a very religious man. Did not believe in divorce. He made a mistake. And he paid for his mistake with a lot of pain, a lot of tears. And there came to a point where he knew he should have gotten a divorce. But he was stuck. He was stuck in something called revenge. He said, she's made me so miserable, I'm going to pay her back. He was stuck. And he stayed in there longer than he should have because it began to attack him. It began to affect him psychologically. And as a result of that, when he eventually did get a divorce, he took that same attitude to other relationships, looking for something to go wrong. He was burned so badly, he did not want to risk pain again. He was going in relationships trying to avoid pain. When it became too close, he would do something to make sure the relationship did not work. He would always try and find something wrong with the person because there are no perfect people. So if you look for it, you can find it. He was stuck in revenge. Another friend of mine, working on a job, loved the company very much, expected to retire there. And one day they called him in the office, asked him for his badge and identification, called the security man up, walked into his desk, told him he was fired and he had to leave then. He was devastated. And if you came anywhere near him, he will tell you his story, as we all have stories. Even when he got a job, he went on the job telling anybody who would listen how they fired him unjustly. And he always ended with, it wasn't fair. Life isn't fair. Life just is.
Don't worry about the people that God has removed from your life. He saw things you didn't see. He heard conversations you couldn't hear. And he made moves you wouldn't make. And that's it. I lived in a car for 3 years. I had nothing. But I made a decision, man. I just started talking to God every day. I just started asking Him for help, to hear me. If you call God and you ask Him to hear you, He hears you. I'm just telling you, it's real. God is real, man. Don't let nobody fool you. Listen to me, young people. Don't let nobody fool you. Come by your house, knock on your door, talking about it ain't no God. You think because somebody say it ain't no God, you think that make it true? God is real, man. If you're trying to make it in this world without God in your life, you're making it way harder than it's got to be. I'm telling you, man, I did it. I did it without Him. It does not work. I flunked out of school. I had a severe stuttering problem. I couldn't talk outside my house. I'm on my 3rd marriage. I lost everything I ever owned twice. I've been homeless and lived in a car for 3 years. You can't tell me nothing about what he can't do for you. Nothing. Let me tell you something, man. I've been bottomed out. I'm talking about flat bottomed out. Nothing. I was talking today with my oldest son. He said, man, every time I hear about something you went through, I just go, how did you make it? I just kept his faith, man. I just kept believing that God didn't bring me this far to leave me.
Sometimes we're trying to play God. We're trying to make our boss promote us, make ourselves get well, and make the contract go through. But as long as we're trying to force it, living frustrated, worried, then God steps back. But when you take your hands off and say, God, I know you've got this. I'm not going to worry about my finances. I'm not going to live uptight because of the medical report. I'm not going to be frustrated because I haven't met the right person. God, I trust your timing and I trust your ways. My life is in your hands. God never promised that we wouldn't have difficulties, but He did promise He would give us strength for every battle. He would take what was meant for harm and use to our advantage. You may have a good reason to worry about something. In your health, your finances, a dream. You've done everything you can. Doesn't look like it's going to work out. Stay in faith. God is saying, I've got this. I'm working behind the scenes. I'm in the process of turning it around. It's just a matter of time before you see things change in your favor. Now, live out of a place of peace, a place of trust. It may not happen the way you thought, but God's ways are better than our ways. God knows what's best for you. He's got this. Don't get discouraged when you face things you don't understand. Obstacles that are bigger than you. That's simply an opportunity for God to show you who He is. It's one thing to believe that God has power, believe that He can do the impossible. That's good. But God wants you to do more than just believe. He wants you to experience His power. He's going to show you His greatness, show you His favor. David had all kinds of things come against him, not just giants, armies, his own family. He had plenty of reasons to live worried, afraid, bitter. But he said in Psalm 27, the Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord protects me from danger. Why should I be afraid? When people come against me, they will stumble and fall. Though a mighty army surrounds me, my heart will know no fear. Even if they attack, I will remain confident. David lived with this attitude. God's got this. I'm not going to be worried. I'm not going to live upset. I know He's bigger than any obstacle that I'm facing. He said a little later, when trouble comes, God will hide me. He will place me out of reach, high on a rock. You may have enemies coming against you, but you have an advantage. God has placed you out of reach. They can't defeat you. They can't keep you from your destiny. Now do like David. Remain confident. Keep your peace. May feel like you're surrounded by an army. The truth is, you are surrounded by God's favor. The forces that are for you are greater than the forces that are against you. David said, even if they attack, I won't get upset. Sickness may have attacked you. Addictions may have attacked. Debt may have attacked. That's a test. Are you going to get worried? Live in fear? What if it doesn't work out? Did you see the medical report? There are 40,000 students. What if he doesn't meet the right people? Stay in peace. Remain confident. God's done it for you in the past. He's going to do it for you again in the future. In a few verses, David said, I am confident I will see the goodness of God. After all he had been through, you would think he'd be negative, worried. God, where were you? He was just the opposite. I know I'll see God's goodness. In other words, I know God's got this. I talked to a lady recently. She had been through a divorce. She was carrying all the hurt and pain. She never dreamed her life would turn out like it had. And she was confused, discouraged, wondering why it had happened. One day, while driving in her car, she felt God say to her, I still have a good plan for your life. Let go of the old. I've got this. At that moment, she made the decision to stop worrying, to stop being down on herself. She let it go. All of a sudden, she told how this heavy weight lifted off of her. She got her joy back, her passion back. Now, new doors are starting to open. New relationships, new opportunities. She's starting to see the beauty for ashes. It all happened when she changed her perspective. Is something weighing you down today? Are you worried about a situation? Frustrated by what didn't work out? Or maybe down on yourself because you're not where you thought you would be? God is saying to you what He said to her. I've got this. It's not a surprise to me. I have new beginnings. I have healing. I have breakthroughs. I'm asking you to change your perspective. Switch over into faith. That situation at work that you're worried about, God's got it. That medical report that's keeping you up at night, living stressed is not making it any better. Be still and know that He is God. He has you in the palm of His hand. He's got this. And yes, you may have enemies coming against you, but like Daniel, God has placed you out of reach. He's made you lion-proof. Now, all through the day, when you're tempted to worry, keep this phrase playing in your mind. God's got this.